right? When we spoke, remind me, how many units a month are you currently selling?
Sure. So that's a kind of a funny story because we, as a company, really went from sort of making it, cooking it in my kitchen
Yeah,
to start to, making a small batch for the Indiegogo backers.
yeah,
And then the first retail customer to discover us was CVS,
yeah.
who said, hey, we've been looking for a product just like this, and we haven't been able to find anything like it. And this is really the perfect thing that
Right.
we'd like to have on the
How did they
shelf.
find you?
They found us online.
Boom.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
the category managers saw it online and said, "Hey, this is exactly what I've been looking
And isn't
for."
it crazy when you have something that's cool? Most people are going to figure out, hey, how can I get into
Mm-hmm.
CVS? How can I get into Quick Trip? And when you have something that's backed by science, that's a legitimate product, they found you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hustle Up podcast, dedicated to all the movers and shakers out there, those who are going past a traditional 40-hour work week to create their life by design. Your woman likes a designer bag, you like designer shoes, and we like designer lives, living on purpose to create the framework for how you want the rest of your entire life to look like. Financial
Sir.
freedom, independence, the whole shebang. My name is Clint Crow,
Jonathan Hessing.
and today we have the pleasure of introducing an incredible guest that we met through a networking event at Thai Atlanta, Mr. Michael Jiang, and his new company,
Dr. Michael Jiang.
Dr. Michael
Recent
Jiang,
doctor, sure.
recent doctor,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
and Emory grad, Michael Jiang, who has created Nerv. Nerv is a phenyl Gaba delivery system that tastes delicious, and essentially a 5-hour energy is a quick shot to bring you up. Nerv is a quick shot to help relieve anxiety and calm you down. Michael, do you want to introduce Nerv and tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, quite simply, Nerv is a two fluid ounce shot for the management of stress and anxiety. So if when you're feeling a little stressed, you can go to the grocery store, grab one of these, and it works right away. I figured, there are hundreds of energy drinks. I saw Jonathan with a bang just earlier,
Yeah.
But when I go to the grocery store, I couldn't find a product that would help me de-stress. And so, as a neuroscientist, I said, hey, why not invent that? And that's what became Nerv.
Neuroscientist from Emory.
Yeah, so I have been studying neuroscience for the past 10 years. Got my bachelor's from Furman University in North Carolina, and then was recruited to the Emory doctoral program 6 years ago and finished 2 years ago.
Cool.
Wow. So what got you into that? What brought you into wanting to study neuroscience to begin with?
Because I love science, and I figured when I was choosing my major that as far as science goes, the brain is really one of the final frontiers
Yeah.
of our understanding, and it's somewhere where even today we can think of it as a black box. There's so much we still don't know about the brain that is still yet to be explored. That I found that to really satisfy my scientific curiosity because I wanted to learn something new, wanted to discover something. And over the next 10, 20 years of a career, there'd be a lot of advancements to be made in neuroscience. Whereas I felt like in a lot of other places we already had a lot of understanding, but neuroscience was a place where we didn't.
Absolutely. I think one of in our last conversation, we've noticed a lot of industries losing to AI and to things, popular technologies of right now that are taking away occupations of the past. And something like neuroscience has no AI. Like you said, there's nothing, it's still a frontier that's completely unexplored. Is how does the brain work? What is its connection to, what's its biological construction? What's it connected to on a universe, collective consciousness? There's a lot of things subconsciously and consciously when am I thinking about that right? Like, is that what neuroscience is? Is how the brain interacts with others and with yourself, or
Well, neuroscience is a very broad topic that covers sort of chemistry, psychology, social science, cognitive neuroscience. There's a lot that really falls under that umbrella. So all of that does, and so does AI. And a lot of ways that we think of AI working are actually based on the way that neurons in the brain communicate, whether that be the formation of neural networks and that being the basis of new computing platforms, or simply the way that the logic in computing works can be based off of the way that neurons work. And so as a field, neuroscience is absolutely enormous. And of course, that also spans the various different neurological diseases that we want to study and cure. It expands, it encompasses learning and memory, and the treatment of attention deficit disorders or Parkinson's and so on.
Would those be considered neurological disorders, Parkinson's and things like that?
Yeah, those are all of the nervous system.
Interesting. So is that how you came up with the concept for this drink, is how can I do a more passive way than medications on the market to help people deal with anxiety that has less of a negative stigma, no crash, maybe a healthier solution, and you just notice nothing? Is that where essentially the idea came from?
So the idea really came from a need that I had and that the people in my life had, and that was that, coming out of grad school and doing your dissertation, it's a very stressful period of your life, right? And you're not the only one who's stressed out, your family is stressed out, your lab mates are stressed out. And it was at that point when I really started thinking like, hey, I need some kind of stress relief on an on-demand basis. And so did all these other people. They were asking me, hey, we're stressed out. Michael, can you help us out? And the puzzle that I had in my mind wasn't that, we have a great understanding of stress in neuroscience and we have great solutions for stress, but why does nobody that I know access them? And what I realized was, first of all, a lot of current solutions for stress and anxiety are gated behind medical diagnoses and pharmacological drugs, pharmaceutical drugs. Other things are heavily stigmatized, like access to behavioral therapy or counseling. And what was really lacking in my mind was, why couldn't stress relief be as simple as going in the morning and picking up a coffee if you're tired? Why can't we get something like that for stress, right? And in particular, why couldn't we have something that came in a format that wasn't stigmatized, that was healthy, and that wasn't age restricted in any way, or legally restricted in any way? And of course, the two examples that I'm thinking of that people currently use are alcohol and marijuana.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, we're able to get coffee or Coca-Cola in a very easily accessible manner. Why can't we do the same for stress? And so that's the idea that I took to the drawing board and said, well, it's clear to me that something like that doesn't exist. But there wasn't a clear reason to me as to why it shouldn't.
First sign of an entrepreneur.
Right.
Solving the problem.
And so, I was really working for myself. I said, well, hey, I'm a neuroscientist.
So you're working for yourself at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was my side project.
Okay.
Right? This was not my dissertation. This was not what I did my research
Just completely out of hobby.
Yeah, just I'm a neuroscientist. I figure I'm stressed out. The people in my life are stressed out. Let's make
something neuroscience.
Let's run an experiment.
Yeah.
Let's read the literature. Let's figure out what the solution could be, and let's make that.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not a food scientist or an entrepreneur. I'm a neuroscientist, and luckily, I went to Emory University, which is a large alumni network with Coca-Cola. And I reached out to my alumni network and I said, hey, I'm looking to create a beverage formulation. And I was very luckily connected with a guy who had been doing beverage formulations at Coca-Cola for about a decade.
Wow.
And so I pitched the idea to him and I said, would you work with me to create a drink? Because that was sort of the thing that I was looking for. And he just said, sure. And together we were able to come up with sort of the back of the napkin formulation for this type of product. And we were able to perfect that over time to something that I really enjoyed, and that, when I gave it to people, that they really enjoyed. And so that was sort of to be the end of it. I'm just got my degree. I'm, really passionate about my research, and and I love to teach, so I'm looking to move in academia, become a professor. And what really stopped me was everybody that I showed Nerv or that I talked about Nerv to said, hey, you know, that sounds like something that I could use or something that I know could use.
Yeah.
Right? And
This is
that
legitimately grassroots. It's
right,
starting
and that
to
it
develop.
wasn't that these people didn't have another option to turn to, right? Whether that be because, you know, you're somebody like myself who can't drink alcohol, or you're somebody that comes from a culture where a lot of sort of medication or therapy is stigmatized, that, you know, your parents won't allow you to go to therapy or something like this, that they didn't have any other options. And so I said to myself, okay, well, if I don't put this out there, it's never going to happen, right? And so with that, you know, we said, well, okay, if there are clearly people who need this product, let's just throw it on Indiegogo.
Yeah.
Right? Let's crowdfund it.
Very nice.
Right? And if the demand is really there, then we'll make it for everybody.
You crowdfunded this with Indiegogo?
Yeah.
Nice.
Tell us about the crowdfunding process. Which, hold on, before you do that, I want to point out one thing is that you've already said many signs that have displayed to me that you're an entrepreneur and a hustle up advocate for sure. I mean, you know, you're usually, when I see you at Thai, you're one of the better dressed guys in the room. You're always looking good. You're always there to do business. I mean, you came in today wearing a City of Atlanta sweater with paint all over your hands, telling me that you were running a little late because you were handling fires at WeWork, and you still drove an hour up here, made it on time for the podcast. And it's the things like that really go into someone being an entrepreneur and a hustler. And I just wanted to point that out because it's one thing to be a neuroscientist and have an idea and have that back of the napkin idea. It's a whole nother job to start going to your alumni network and finding that connection to make step 2 possible, and then step 3. And so I just wanted to point that out because, you know, while we're talking about science, like, there's also another whole field here that we got to get into about you, which is, when did you become an entrepreneur? What age were you when you realized that you wanted to, you know, or did it come from you found something valuable that
even with this product, you keep identifying as a neuroscientist, like that's who you are. At what point did becoming an entrepreneur did you say, okay, well, this is a thing. I'm going to start this business?
So I think even today I would really identify myself as an accidental entrepreneur.
Okay.
And I say that because, you know, entrepreneurship is not really something that people dive into without a lot of background. You know, you'll more likely than not fail. And I really come from a background where I'd been studying neuroscience for my entire life. Never taken a business course, didn't do an MBA, really had no background in business at all. And the reason I'm an accidental entrepreneur is because, you know, through my own life experience, I stumbled into a problem that I was able to solve. And in solving that, the perfect solution was a consumer product, right? It was sort of the necessary format for it. And the need not only stemmed from myself, but then it eventually stemmed from the people that I then met, the people in my life, the people around me, the people that I worked with, and it really behooved me to change the way I thought about science, and that, you know, everybody who's a scientist does science for the good of humanity. Yeah. Right. To learn something new, to make discoveries, to advance humankind. Right. And so. And in my previous research, you know, I worked on disease models. I'm looking to cure stroke, create therapies to help people with ischemic stroke.
This was for school?
Yeah, I mean, This is what I got my doctorate in.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, I'd worked on alcohol addiction. I worked on, you know, conservation. And so the transition from, you know, I'm trying to help people to I'm trying to help people by being an entrepreneur, that wasn't difficult, right? Because I really, you know, Nerv is not a product that's a Me Too or you know, a small tweak of an existing product. It's really a new category of products in over-the-counter stress relief that didn't used to exist. And so the way that I really saw it is, well, here I'm able to apply my neuroscience ability and knowledge and learning in a format that will be able to help a lot of people who are struggling with an intense problem very quickly and in a scalable way. Right? And that was extremely appealing to me. I think when I realized that was the day that I said, you know, this is worth spending my time on. This is worth putting off the academic career to make sure that this happens. Because if this is successful and it's able to help people, that's ultimately my goal as a scientist.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't really see myself changing from a scientist to an entrepreneur, right? I'm still true to my goal as a scientist, but I'm also, coming into this role as an entrepreneur, and doing so in sort of a trial by fire, because I didn't really anticipate it.
Right.
We didn't prepare for it.
There's no
and
perfect
just sort
training
of
manual,
it's like you got to learn to swim by jumping in the water, right?
Yeah.
You can't learn reading a book. And so I don't have, you asked me to talk about what kind of, business book. I haven't done much reading on
Right.
that front. Outside of, looking for good mentors, looking for people who sort of fill in my weaknesses, I very much do still identify as a scientist.
Absolutely. Well, let's
in this role.
let's
I
touch on. Go ahead.
I want to talk about phenyl Gaba. What is this main ingredient? What's the formulation in this? Is it safe? What are people taking?
Sure. So there's a long list of compounds that people use for managing stress and anxiety, and the vast majority of them, they're either prescribed medications, or they're illicit drugs.
Right.
And so they're not accessible for consumers in a mass market. And so part of my goal was, I said, I've got to figure out what is a short list of effective compounds that would help people manage stress and anxiety, that importantly we can access in a consumer space, and would be amenable to a drink formulation, right? And just by those questions alone, you really shortlist, from hundreds to just a few.
Yeah.
Right.
And then from the few, then I'm looking at, well, what's the safest, best, most appropriate ingredients to use. And there, my knowledge of neuroscience really came in handy, because, from a neuroscience point of view, it's very clear where stress and anxiety come from, the amygdala and the limbic system,
Yep.
right? When that's hyperactivated, our stress and flight or flight response is activated. And in many cases in society today, our bodies can't tell the difference between a looming deadline and a tiger, right? So we understand the brain mechanisms, and we understand the neurotransmitters that work in those systems, which are GABA to calm things down and glutamate to speed things up, right? And so our brains naturally have GABA to calm our nervous system,
Right.
to go from on to off. And so the invention of phenyl Gaba in the 60s is simply the neurotransmitter GABA in a form that you can drink and that will cross the blood-brain barrier. And so that was invented originally to help cosmonauts go into space with anxiety go on a space mission.
What
right?
year do you
So
think
it's,
this was?
This was in the 60s. It was either 63 or 67.
Okay.
But it was in the 60s that the phenyl Gaba compound was invented. And then since then, the pharmaceutical companies have moved on to the second and third generations of these compounds that they can patent and make money on, but they sort of forget about the early stuff, right? But that doesn't mean it's any different. It still works in exactly the same way. There's decades of literature and use behind phenyl Gaba, but the only sort of leap that no one had made was, okay, let's take these effective, compounds for anxiety, and let's create consumer products out of them.
What
And that
was the barrier?
Well, there are a number of barriers that as I've personally found out trying to do this formulation.
Absolutely. There's a reason no one's done it
Right,
yet.
they range from really an understanding of pharmacology and the neuroscience
Mhm.
to food science. Can you get it to dissolve in a drink? How do you flavor it? Can you make it taste good? Will it even work if you drink it? And so there's just so many complexities when you make that transition from a powder or a pill to a beverage or a foodstuff, that they weren't simple problem to solve. We were fortunately able to overcome them and create this formulation, but it certainly wasn't easy.
How long did it take you to create the finished product? Once you knew that you were going to use phenyl Gaba and you start experimenting with different formulations for taste, how long did it take you to get from the starting point to here?
Right.
Not
Well, that's
not even the
thing is-
package.
Yeah, no,
just-
that's the thing is we didn't even start with phenyl GABA.
Yeah.
We started with a range of ingredients.
Yeah.
Lots of different formulations, combinations, and so on. And then at the same time, you're overcoming, solubility issues, stability issues. Just because you put in a drink, will it break down in 7 hours and then it's useless? Or, if it sits on a shelf, is it going to be shelf stable?
How long is it
for
shelf
an
life?
appreciable amount of time? And so with our formulation that we settled on, we had to balance all of these things.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just phenyl GABA in the beginning, right? And so we spent, I would say, the better half of a year and a half, from sort of idea to formulation, then tweaking the formulation. And even that was pretty fast, I think, because we ended up with a formulation that things worked out for us. Like, it was shelf stable. So this bottle is good on shelf for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't break down. It comes in an opaque plastic bottle so that you're not dealing with the sun. It's temperature stable, which is important in the manufacturing process of drinks. A lot of times if you want a sterile process, you have to boil the ingredients and hot fill the drink so that they're safe. And a lot of ingredients break down when they're boiled, so you have to make sure that there are all of these physics barriers and chemistry barriers and food science barriers that you're working with to make sure that the product works how you expect. And we got pretty lucky in some ways that our formulation just was really perfect for a beverage.
So for all those who can't see it, the bottle it comes in looks like a 5-hour energy. Is it the same size as far as?
It's a little bit bigger. 5 hours, 1.9 ounces. This is 2 ounces.
Okay, and so how did you get? Do you call it a dosage or how did you get this size as opposed to a Bang energy drink or a Red Bull? Why is this the amount?
Sure. The one word answer to that question had to do with stigma. And that was when I looked at a lot of stress relief solutions that people felt like they couldn't access them because they were stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was thinking about how do I create a solution for stress that isn't stigmatized, the sort of things that ran through my mind were, well, we'd want to create something that was convenient, right? And we'd want to create something that you could use right away, right? Quickly,
right?
When you needed it. And so all of that to me suggested it needed to be smaller, right? So I didn't want, for someone to be in a pinch and have to chug, a 16-ounce drink.
Yeah.
I certainly couldn't do that. And so I wanted it to be something you could really use like a shot, right? So one go and it's done. And then something that, you could carry around with you so that you could use it when you need it. So for example, you get one of these, you slip it in your purse, you slip it in your pocket, or you're in your backpack, and it's good to go whenever, right? It's not too big that it wouldn't fit in somebody's, wherever somebody wanted to carry it. And it just made it more convenient and accessible, right? And but there's no reason that Nerv has to look like this. In our current iterations, we're thinking of we've already got in the pipeline full-size drinks, teas, and carbonated beverages of all different kinds. But our flagship product, the shot, really felt to me like the sort of natural way to provide that effect.
Path of least resistance into the market.
Right.
So how do you know? So that's awesome. And again, for all those who can't see, it's a lime green. It looks like this is citrus flavor, fast acting, long lasting, very simplistic cover, very inviting bottle design. Did you design this? Partially.
I worked with a designer friend of mine. But together, as it was really as a team that we thought about the creative process for how it ought to look. Just to give you a couple examples, when you create something that looks like this in a little bottle, it's very easy for people to assume that it's an energy drink. And we're sort of the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And so we didn't want people to think that. And so what we did, for example, is we went to the grocery store and we looked at the energy drink aisle and said, what are the colors that people are using here? What is the kind of, look and feel of their packaging? And let's do something totally different.
What did you walk away with?
Right?
For me, a color that immediately resonates is red.
Right. I mean, just look at the energy drink that you were just drinking.
Yeah,
right? You're
it was red.
Very loud reds, blues, purples, very bold colors, right? And then the text is usually extremely sort of shouty and capitalized. And so we said, let's do the opposite of all that. First of all, let's go with sort of a calming color, right? And then we went with this, a pastel green, which, just by the color alone is sort of relaxing,
Absolutely.
right? Like a natural looking, pastel.
It doesn't look invasive at all.
Right, and then we said, let's keep a lot of white space on the label.
Yep.
Make sure that it's not shouty, or have the package speak for you, so that if this is sitting on the shelf, somebody's going to look at it and say, "Oh, this is different. What's this?"
What is this?
Right, and when they really see, "Oh, it's this de-stress," that's clearly a very different message from energy and hype and bang and all that kind of stuff, right? And so that was sort of our creative design process. We said we want to differentiate it, and then the other sort of main design philosophy that we incorporated was, stress and anxiety. These are not gendered problems, right? These are problems that people experience no matter what age you are, no matter what background you come from, and no matter what you do, right? And so we wanted to create something that sort of reflected that, and that people from all walks of life would feel they could identify with, right? That it wasn't alienating in its design or in its sort of communication, so that everybody could access it, right? Because the last thing that we wanted to do was really alienate anybody who was struggling with this problem and their ability to sort of pick up a product that they felt they couldn't identify with. And so we went with something more universal. We went with a flavor that is widely accepted, a citrus flavor, and just didn't sort of incorporate anything into design that would alienate anybody.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of
Interesting.
stigmatizing, if somebody, most things that'll help you manage stress can also be, or a lot of things that are going to help you manage stress can also be abused. Can you get high, drunk, messed up on this product? How does it work? Is there a stigma there for potential abuse?
Right, great question. And you're right in that even when something is just suggested as this is a product for stress, that alone can be stigmatizing, because nobody, it's cool to be like, hey, I only slept 3 hours last night, I need to drink a coffee. That's cool.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not cool to rock up and say, oh, I'm so stressed out, I don't know how I'm going to handle these things, and here's my solution for it. That's not cool.
Yeah.
Right? And so thinking about, right, and so a lot of these solutions that are out there, that whether they be, prescription medications or anything of that nature, people tend to use them in secret. And they tend to use them oftentimes off-label.
Not being able to manage your own stress is stigmatized. It's not. You're right. It's not cool.
So it's not, and it's not just not being able to manage yourself, but it's also not being able to reach out, not being able to talk about it openly, and then not be able to get the help that you need. Right?
It's like almost like you're putting negative or perceived negative energy out there. You don't want to say I'm stressed and have people tune into your stress.
Right, and so unfortunately, one of the side effects of that is you end up with a lot of people abusing compounds or products in ways that they weren't designed for.
Yeah.
Right? Whether that be, I'm already on these antidepressant medications or SSRIs, and I say, well, I'm feeling extra stressed today, I'm just going to take another one. Right, so a lot of people, they do these things where, they don't really realize, oh, this is not how they were intended to be used, right?
Whether you're self-medicating with a product or a habit, you end up in that process of self-medicating.
Right, and so part of my idea with the creation of this product was, let's make something that's accessible and easy to use and easy to understand. That was the main thing, right? When people are using pills or powders or supplements, those are very difficult for the average person to really measure out carefully and to understand the pharmacology of. When you create a beverage like Nerv, all of the legwork has been done on the back end, right? So we've already figured out the formulation, the pharmacology, how much you need, and put it in a format that's very easy to understand, because it's a single bottle, it looks like a small shot, it's, anybody could realize, oh, this is something you open and you drink it, and that's it, that's the end of the story. You're not worrying about dosing, you're not worrying about abuse, you're not worrying about, is it the right thing for me, right? Because this was already designed for your daily use activities.
Well, and speaking of daily use activities, is this 750 milligrams?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What kind of tolerance buildup do you see to phenyl Gaba? If I were to take one of these every day for a week, would it still have the same effect on me at day 8 as on day 1, or at some point would I need to start taking 2? Would I need to start
Great
taking
question.
3?
Yeah. So with anything that affects your brain, there's going to be some plasticity that your brain is able to bounce back and build tolerance to, and that's certainly the case with phenyl Gaba and Nerv. And you'll see in the use instructions that, I've really done my due diligence and said, hey, if you want this product and this effect to last for you forever, you really want to be taking this with a day spaced in between, and up to 3 a week. Right. So I wouldn't suggest that you use this every day. If you did, what you would find is that you would build a tolerance to it very quickly. Right. So for some people, and that's different for every person. For some people, it could be a few weeks. Other people, it could be a few months. But if you use it all the time and it's always in your system, your brain will say, oh well, it's going to put a new set point for the neurotransmitters, and so you would build a tolerance, and eventually you have to use more and more and more.
Well, how about any withdrawal symptoms? If I were to take this every day for a week, if I'm let's say we're abusing it, not in the sense of actual abuse, but past what you've recommended for weekly dosage, and I'm taking it every 24 hours for a month. At some point, is my brain going to have built up a being used to this drug, and then am I going to experience some type of negative consequence when I am not getting my daily dose?
Right. So when you do use it outside of those recommended parameters and you build up that tolerance, there is a withdrawal symptom associated with sort of going cold turkey.
I mean, you experience that with nicotine too. Nicotine
with
or caffeine.
Nicotine, everything, whether it be you can't sleep or actually you're feeling more anxiety.
Is it substantial?
Well, so with phenyl Gaba, the beauty of this product is that it's very easy to taper. Right? So if you do feel that you've used it more than you should have and that you've built this tolerance to it, you can quite simply just start tapering it yourself, right? And it's a drink, so if you were drinking one a day, just take a half, right? And then there will be no withdrawal symptom. And so, we've really tried to make that as easy as possible, but the best solution, in my opinion, is, I've really designed this to be a on-demand, as-needed type of product. And you're right, some people are very stressed out, and they might feel like, I'm coming up on a very stressful week, let me, take one every day. Well, the other thing that I've worked into this product is that it has a very long half-life. So what that means is when you drink a Nerv, the effect is going to last anywhere between 5 and 24 hours. Right? The half-life is 5.5 hours. So even 10 hours later, you've still got a quarter bottle of Nerv in you. Right? And so, in that way, you really don't need to take more than one a day, because you can have one in the morning and last you all day and into the evening, or you can take one in the evening and last you all night and into the morning even. And so there's really no reason to have to take it all the time. It's really long lasting.
Well, talk about the half-life in comparison to caffeine, because isn't caffeine a half-life of 6 hours?
Right.
And it's similar?
So, well, caffeine, the metabolism is slightly different.
Okay.
With phenyl Gaba, it's not metabolized at all, so it's purely by renal elimination, so how often you go to the bathroom. Whereas caffeine actually can be broken down, and so for people with different metabolisms, it's going to be faster or slower, but generally caffeine, you're going to hit sort of your max dose within just depending on the ingredients, but half an hour and an hour, but then the effect will last really between 4 and 6 hours, whereas something like Nerv, it's a little slower acting to begin with. Also, 30 minutes to an hour to start, but then the peak isn't until, say, 5 hours later, and then lasting another 5. So the effect lasts much longer, which means that you don't have to take it as often. So you're not, and you shouldn't be in a situation where you have to drink coffee in the morning and then have a topper at noon. This is something you can take once during the day and be done with it and forget about it.
So as the creator of this, you know what it does. But as a consumer, I go to the counter, I purchase this. I don't know what it's going to do. It's my first time buying it. I take the whole thing, throw it out as I'm leaving the gas station. What am I feeling? How long does it take for me to feel it? What am I feeling, and when does it wear off?
Well, sure. So let's assume that you're feeling a little stressed, as you know, pretty much everyone is these days.
Big meeting at work.
Right.
Prepared for it all week.
Going for a date. I mean, you name it, right? What you would feel is if you're on empty stomach, it'd probably start working in about a half hour.
Okay.
And you would feel more calm. You would feel less stressed. If your mind is racing and your heart is beating, those would go away. And you would feel really more in the zone, right? You would feel like yourself without the stress or anxiety that you were feeling. What this doesn't do is it doesn't change your personality in any way. It's got a very specific target in the limbic system that only suppresses the feelings of stress and anxiety, nothing else, right? And in that respect, you know, it's very easy to sort of understand and use because it's very specific in its mechanism of action, and it only does one thing, right? And that effect is going to last with you between 5 and 10 hours, depending on your kidney activity, depending on how often you go to the bathroom, basically.
If so, I can drive on it, obviously.
Yeah.
And if I'm an athlete, is this something I might want to do before a game?
Yeah, absolutely. We've heard from athletes who say, "Hey, this helps me perform on the field or in the gym." And in fact, I heard from Clint.
So phenyl Gaba, I have taken it as a bodybuilding supplement, and for all those who are watching and saying, dude, you're not a bodybuilder, there was a point where I lifted pretty heavy weights. I've calmed down, but it translates to phenobut in your system, right? This is a popular supplement that weightlifters have used for years. Phenobut helps you reach it promotes deeper, more restful sleep. And also releases higher HGH levels in your body. So you're producing more human growth hormone using this as a supplement at night. And whether it's regular use, there was a point at which I used it 3 times a week after leg day workouts to promote a larger HGH production in my body. So this is it can be a great extra edge for athletes who are trying to build their body naturally.
Well, the other thing to mention here is that we also have nerves in the peripheral nervous system in our body that control our muscles, and those also use GABA to regulate muscle activity. And oftentimes, when people are experiencing spasms or cramps, those are really instances where the neurotransmitters at the neuromuscular junction have gotten out of whack or out of balance. And so one of the effects of Nerve is that it actually does distribute a stronger GABAergic tone in the peripheral nervous system to increase the user's ability to control their muscles. And that's also one of the reasons why it's used in weightlifting, is because you really want to have very fine motor control when you're lifting, and Nerve would help with that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier you could drink this before a date, help calm the nerves. A lot of dates, people are going to grab a drink while they're out, right? Is it possible to drink at least responsibly while you have this phenyl GABA in your system? How do the two mix?
Sure. So one thing that I'd really like to champion is that Nerve is the perfect anti-anxiety or stress relieving solution. Actually, I might have to cut that out because I'm not allowed to use this word. Nerve is the perfect tool to help manage stress and anxiety before you drive, because you can drive on it. Right, I'm absolutely against any kind of drunk driving or alcohol, mixing alcohol and driving, and so Nerve is sort of the perfect pre-game or pre-event drink for any kind of social activity, because it'll help with the sort of social anxiety.
Those natural social inhibitions are lowered without the poor decisions.
Well, it's not inhibitions, but it's the anxiety, it's the social anxiety, right? But without impairing your ability to drive, which is huge. Right.
Or make good decisions.
Right. Or change your personality, or make bad decisions or anything like that. And so I would highly recommend that you use Nerve instead of alcohol, or really before any kind of social activity where you're feeling anxious. And then if you do end up going out and there is alcohol, you'd want to be more careful, because the interaction between Nerve and alcohol can be very, very complicated.
It's mixing two downers.
Well, they're both relaxants.
Yeah.
Right? Alcohol is much more wide spectrum in that it affects a lot of central nervous system activities, like your personality, like your motor coordination, whereas Nerve is much more specific for sort of emotional and fear and anxiety type circuitry, right? And so where there's sort of overlap, you're going to have synergies of those effects, and then outside of that, alcohol is still going to have its regular effect. And so if you do mix the two, what I would recommend is you do so very carefully. And you do so with, make sure you do consult your physician if you're on any kinds of relaxants or depressants already, just to make sure that there's not going to be any kind of interaction that would be unexpected. And if you do mix nerve and alcohol, you should do so very, very carefully, and I would not advise it. There are a lot of people like myself who can't drink alcohol, so for us, Nerv is the perfect solution because there's nothing that I can drink socially.
How about sex? Can you have sex on this?
Yeah, actually, I've heard a little bit of feedback from anonymous sources that intimacy can be one of the most stressful and anxiety-inducing things that sort of occur in our daily lives, and that can really manifest in a number of ways, and just some examples that I've heard from users are, for example, some guys, when they're really anxious, one of the symptoms or one of the results of that is they finish too early.
Sure.
Because they're stressed and anxious.
Yeah.
Right.
So this could help with ED.
And well, ED and premature is they're
two
separate things.
Yeah.
But actually, both of those can be related to being stressed and anxious. Yeah. Right. And so when guys feel more themselves
social
and less
pressure,
stress,
less anxiety,
right? And because they've taken a Nerv,
relaxed,
right? I've heard from guys who are like, "Hey, this helps me last longer.
Yeah,
it helps me be intimate.
Yeah,
or to initiate." And so, although Nerv has absolutely nothing.
This is
to
anecdotal.
Do,
this is just
right. It has nothing to do
Yeah.
with your private parts and intimacy at all. It just so happens that stress and anxiety are so pervasive in our lives. Intimacy being one of those that some people have found it to be very useful to help them in their intimate life.
So, thank you. That's all great info. Yeah. One of the things that I want to tie it back for listeners that are particular. This neuroscience is fascinating, by the way.
Absolutely.
This is one of the most interesting. This is one of the most interesting conversations I can remember having in recent history. So thank you for all of that. For a lot of our listening base is going to be motivated millennial hustlers. And I want to touch back on the entrepreneurship business aspect of this. You've created a hell of a product, and it's not hard to sell something that you back fully, that you believe in, right? When we spoke, remind me, how many units a month are you currently selling?
Sure. So that's a kind of a funny story because we, as a company, really went from sort of cooking it in my kitchen to start to, making a small batch for the Indiegogo backers.
Yeah. And
then the first retail customer to discover us was CVS.
Yeah.
Who said, hey, we've been looking for a product just like this, and we haven't been able to find anything like it, and this is really the perfect thing that we'd like to have on the shelf.
How did they find you?
They found us online.
Boom.
Yeah, one of the category managers saw it online and said, hey, this is exactly what I've been looking for.
Isn't it crazy when you have something that's cool? Most people are going to figure out, hey, how can I get into CVS? How can I get into Quick Trip? And when you have something that's backed by science, that's a legitimate product, they found you. You had the right idea.
We were very surprised. I mean, it's really, when I was experimenting with the product idea, it was apparent to me that my Uber driver, my aunt, my friend of a friend, everybody could use a product like this, and so it wasn't a surprise to me that a lot of people needed it. What was really surprised that the first person to really approach us and say, hey, we're really interested in this product was CVS.
Yeah.
I mean, we had been approached by smaller retailers who said, hey, we'd love to have you in our gym or our yoga studio or, our 7-Eleven or something like this, or our university campus store. But CVS is sort of a different retail customer because they're, everywhere. And when we started piloting with them, sort of our sales ramped from just, doing a few thousand a month. And
whoa! You started out doing a few thousand units a month?
Oh, so the pilot that we started with them covered about 200 stores.
Yeah. And
in 200 stores, we were doing a few thousand a month. just from people walking in and looking at the product. And when that pilot came back successful, and we sort of got a handle on the data on how many people were buying it, what was the sort of interest in the consumer trends in this space, they wanted to take us nationwide. They said, this is a product we want to put in just about every other CVS, right. And so we went up to from 200 locations to 4,500 locations pretty much overnight. At the start of this year.
That's incredible.
And so
4,500?
Yeah. And so that was after a 6-month trial period. We got great data from that trial, and the next step was, hey, we want to put it everywhere. And so really our operations and sales jumped from doing a few thousand a month to 100,000 plus a month, really overnight.
Yeah.
And that we're still in the middle of that rollout right now. So I don't know when everyone's going to be hearing this, but we expect to be on the shelf at CVS, at just about every other CVS, by about May.
Okay.
And if you look in your mail, you'll see something from CVS with Nerv on it at sometime in May as well.
Nice.
That's fantastic.
Well, so you get this order. Somebody approaches you and says, Dr. Jiang, great news. Your product is succeeding in our stores, and we want to do 100,000 units a month in 4,500 different locations. You scramble, right? I mean, what do you do? Like,
Right.
how did you say, okay, we need a manufacturer, we need a distributor, we need a way to deliver this. Can you take a formula to a food and beverage distribution center and say, I need somebody to make this and get it there, and I'll just tell you how many? Like, how does that look?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're the one doing this because do you have a business person, or are you the one handling these deals?
Oh, I have 3 fantastic partners.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you have the guy who works for Coca-Cola, he's a partner?
No, we contracted him to do formulation work for us.
So real quick, just before you jump into that, like what is it that your partners do?
Sure.
With you?
So I have 3 partners, all with their own specialties that we don't overlap, because I'm a scientist, as I mentioned.
Is it 3 including you, or 3 additional?
Not including me. And so my key partners, I have one person who's an operator who sort of is very skilled and experienced at operating a company.
Mm-hmm.
I've got another person who's got a very strong financial background.
Okay.
And then a third person who's got a very strong distribution and retail background.
Got you.
And so the 4 of us are sort of the team that were able to make this happen. Because to Clint's point, you're right. It was it's when businesses and startups scale, there are a lot of growing pains associated with that, right? If you're a small business owner, you're dealing with everything from HR to insurance to healthcare benefits to operations and logistics and supply chain and everything, right? Everything has to scale at the rate in which you want to satisfy your customers, and going from like we said, 200 to 4,500 stores, that's not really much of a curve, right? That's more of a ramp. That's kind of a stepwise growth pattern that really requires a different type of growth. So it's not just a matter of, we're growing quickly on a curve, let's hire people, in a linear fashion and then meet the demand. It was sort of like everything is about the company has to change overnight.
Yep.
Right? Your insurance requirements are different. Your logistics requirements are different. Your supply chain is completely different.
Right?
Your placing orders are different.
Are there employees in there as well?
No, just us.
You 4. You have a team of 4.
We do have a smaller team of people that help us on the ground, shipping orders and things like this. But on the business end of things, it's just the 4 of us. And you just have to navigate things one at a time. To be honest, when you scale at that speed, it's as awesome as it is painful. Yeah. Because if you're not able to fulfill the order, and sometimes it may not be possible. Yeah. Right? So you first have to work out, is it even possible for us to do this? And if it is possible, how are we going to do it? And are we going to be able to do it quickly and efficiently? Yeah. Because we're not talking about, scaling up and launching 6 months or a year from now. We're talking about, hey, we need to get product out within the month, get it on the shelf in two,
Yeah.
and all of the, you have to source everything, you have to, get everything where it needs to be, make sure it happens, and then come up with the capital to do so. And so just about everything has to scale very, very quickly, and that's a process that you really need a strong team around you to be able to do, because sort of as a small business owner, and if you're just working by yourself, that is an amazing opportunity that you might end up having to say no to, or you might say yes to it and not be able to fulfill it.
Yeah, that's where a lot of companies that see early success is fail at that growth stage, because going 0 to 100 is amazing. Going 100 to 0 is awful. And that's just something that scale and that preparation, that really is that next step. And it's great to have all these customer orders, but I'll tell you a story. The hoverboards? Do you remember when those hoverboards first came out? I was up in New York listening to a panel, and the CEO of one of the companies was on it, and they had gotten either Kylie Jenner or Justin Bieber on a hoverboard, and then that person put out a video about it, and overnight the demand went up for that, kind of like yours, but an astronomical scale. And their Chinese manufacturers heard about it and started overcharging them because they heard about the scale. Next thing you know, the company tanked within a year, and the CEO is looking for a new gig. And it's like, if you're not prepared to scale, and it seems like you've got a good team and a good plan around it, but scaling a company, going from 200 to 4,500 units, that's insane. That's a lot of preparation. So I just wanted to throw in that sentiment about how hard scaling really is, and how any entrepreneur or someone building something, like you said, small business growing, doing it by yourself to growing it into a team to growing it to multiple customers, multiple locations, that's no easy feat. And that's something everyone needs to be cognizant about. Is step 1 is hard, but step 2 of the growth is even harder, just as hard, if not harder.
So for anybody in a similar situation, you go from, let's say, 5,000 units a month, 3,000 units a month. They bring an order and say, Dr. Jiang, we need 100,000 a month. Mm-hmm. How did you, one of the things you mentioned is raising capital. How did you come up with even just the money to purchase the materials to get 100,000 units for this first order? Because they'll pay for them, they'll sell. Yeah. Did they put down a deposit? Did you have to go and raise it from somebody?
Right. So one thing I will mention that is more specific to Nerv is that one of the fortunate aspects of our business is that there's a very mature food and supplement and manufacturing industry in the United States. And so, one of our saving graces is that we didn't have to then expand our plant or build a new building, right, to be able to meet that sort of demand. There are already so many, drink manufacturers that we could simply take the order to them, say, hey, can you produce this product with these ingredients? And more often than not, they can absolutely service 100,000 units a day even. And so that wasn't an issue when it came to scaling, right? Some of the issues that we definitely did run into that were very challenging were more on the supply chain side of things, right? So like you said, how do I even get these ingredients?
Yeah.
Where do they come from? Can we get them in time? Does anybody even have enough stock?
Right.
Right?
And the answer to go to 4 different
and the answer to all of those questions was no in the beginning, right? There is not a single ingredient supplier in the United States that could fill this order.
Yeah.
And so we really had to scramble and figure out, like, where can we get what? Who can we get it from? Right. Can we get it in the time? Can we get it the quality that we need? Because we need to quality test everything, make sure it's pure. Mm-hmm. And then can we get it to the plant in time, and so on and so forth. So there were a lot of sourcing challenges, right, on the supply chain, making sure we get what we needed. And then on the capital end of things, you're working multiple different entities at this point, right? So you're talking about, we're acting as a distributor and a manufacturer. We've got a retail customer that then has its own customers. Yeah. Right? And in this case, CVS is also acting like our distributor because we're shipping to warehouses and then it's going to individual stores, right? So fortunately, we're cutting some of our logistics costs because they're taking it to the stores. We just have to ship it in mass to a distribution center, right? So we had a few sort of helping hands with just the industry and the product format, and then on the challenge end of things with the capital and the ingredient sourcing and then scaling the operations, we were really able to pull together the expertise from the team because I'm relatively new entrepreneur, but my partners are they've been in entrepreneurship for 3 decades.
Wow.
They've built
Established business.
come out of companies that have hundreds to thousands of employees, and have really sort of managed operations at that kind of level before. And so capital wise, we've really tried to sort of pull together by the bootstraps and fund as much of it as we possibly could by ourselves. And then when we quickly realized that, hey, there's a lot of costs here that we're going to have to raise for, we immediately started doing that. And fortunately, I'd already been networking and talking to a lot of interested investors who said, oh, we love the product or we love this idea, that it wasn't too difficult to sort of pull together just a bare minimum amount that we needed to service the order. But on that note, I would highly advise to anyone listening that the adage when it comes to capital is always raise the money when you don't need it, because by the time you need it, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
Then you're because not only are you scrambling to find the capital, but you're also having to do all this other stuff at the same time.
Yeah,
right.
And you're having to pay premium prices on things out of a scarcity
exactly.
mindset. Yeah.
And so always raise when you don't need it, and raise with the mindset that we're gonna be successful.
Yeah. Same thing with an attorney. You don't want an attorney when you need an attorney. You want to have an attorney once said that, and it strikes very similar. Is you don't want to get something when you need it. Tell me about the Indiegogo campaign, because would you consider yourself successful with the Indiegogo campaign?
Yeah, I mean, we came up with this product that we thought just about everybody on the internet would think of somebody that could use it. It was a format that was easy to produce and ship. It was easy to understand. And so we thought crowdfunding would really be a way that a lot of people could sort of get accustomed to the idea and then figure out if that was something for them. And so we just put it online and we said, hey, is there anybody out there that's interested in this product?
Did you make a video? Did you run social ads?
We
like,
made
what
a
was
video.
the campaign like?
Yeah, so it was a very bare
Can we
bones
link it
campaign.
down here?
No, it's over.
It's over.
Finished
Do you have the
point.
video anywhere? Or?
I don't think the Indiegogo video is up anymore. We have a lot of videos on the website, but
website link right here.
Yeah, I don't remember if the Indiegogo website is video still up. But it was just sort of a very informal, like, hey, here's a product we're working on. If you're interested in it, back us and we'll be able to make it for you. Yeah. And we got so much interest from the Indiegogo users that we raised the full manufacturing round in the first week.
Which was, do you mind?
It was about 20-something thousand.
Okay.
That was just, again, a bare bones raise for us to be able to just manufacture this stuff for everybody. And we got featured the first day that we were live on the site on the homepage at Indiegogo. Wow. And so just from that, the users saw like, hey, I could use this product. I'd be interested in this. And we got, more than enough backers in the first week to say, well, okay, clearly there's an interest here from all people from all sorts of life and all from different places, and we said let's go ahead and make it for them.
Yep.
Right. We owe it to really everybody to be able to help them out here. That's why we were even working on this in the first place.
Absolutely.
And then from there, that's where things really ramped up. So it was a sort of a product that people needed and came in a format that was accessible and very easy for people to crowdfund it.
So do you get a bottle for contributing? Because I know there's different tiers. So I know a lot of people don't understand how crowdfunding works. Like you make a video, then maybe you run social ads. Do you do like a tiered kind of donate this much, you get this, donate that much, you get that?
Yeah, no, we did that. So crowdfunding is sort of a combination of both investment and sales, because a lot of people will be first of all, they're really funding the creation of a product. Right. And there are a lot more costs that go into that than just the product itself. There's research and development costs, there's logistics and business costs and so on. And so you're really getting sort of a small group of early stage sort of product enthusiasts who either really are interested in a product or really interested in the business. Who can put any amount that they feel comfortable with to sort of help make it a thing, right? Because we were at that point making this stuff in my kitchen. There was no way I could service hundreds of people, right? And so with that, we were able to service thousands of people, and so they were really helping make it a thing. with the campaign, and we were sort of happy to sort of make it appealing in as many ways as we could. So we did roll out tiered rewards. We created a bunch of swag. We offered different sort of packages, and of course, you would get your Nerve with your if you backed us, and you were one of the first people to get your hands on it, right?
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
so people were very happy with our stuff, and we made all this swag. We had T-shirts and hoodies and tote bags and all everything you could think of,
Yep.
and that was a really fun process.
Absolutely.
Designing stuff
Yep.
and making cool swag. So we had a blast with the campaign. We were so happy with all the people who backed us, and then they were happy with what they got and all the cool things that we were able to send them. And a lot of them have stayed on as customers, right? So that they got their Nerve. They helped fund it, and then now that it's available, they can purchase it at a discount and whenever they need it. So
Yeah.
it's sort of as an ongoing relationship with a lot of our early customers, because again, those early adopters, they were really a lot of the people who had the most need,
Yeah.
right? They looked at it and they were like, I'm willing to pay whatever for this because I need it.
So having that first mover advantage and being first to market with this kind of thing, what is the brand for it? How do you build a brand around something like this? What are you focusing on as being the key characteristics of this profile of Nerv? If that question makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And that's something that we're very cognizant about.
Yeah.
So thinking about,
Because the stigmatizing.
right, exactly. There's a lot of complicated cultural and social elements at play that really have to be addressed at a high level before you can even start thinking about a brand.
Absolutely.
Right? And a lot of that is already manifested in the way that you see the current bottle and the videos and the social media. But it's there are a few tenets that we pay very close attention to, and that is we want to make the brand accessible. We want to make it not we don't want to stigmatize it. And we want to make it available for everybody. So that cuts out a lot of messaging that we're unable to do, right? So as an example, I was talking to Clint earlier, there are a lot of use cases that we don't highlight because we don't want people to think of Nerv as a stress drink or as a dating drink or anything like that. We just want people to think of Nerv in the way that people think of coffee, in that, hey, I'm stressed out, I drink a Nerv, I'm tired of drinking coffee, right? And in that sense, it's something small, cool that you can pick up and use whenever you want, right? And there are so many different use cases that we really want to highlight the different types of people that use the product, right? So you've got people from students to nurses to the retired athletes. You've got all sorts of different people using it.
That's
and
right.
So you want to highlight that, like, hey, you could really see yourself with this product because it's not just for college kids, or it's not just for adults or something like that, right? Or the elderly. And so we've tried to be very inclusive in our branding. We've tried to be very accurate and scientific, because that's sort of what I bring to the company, in that this is not a willy-nilly formulation. This is really a scientifically formulated product that I like to communicate as much, and I want to make sure that I'm doing my role. I'm doing my fulfilling my role as a scientist to really help educate people on the problem, and that it's not just, and oftentimes it's not just a chemical problem, right? A lot of stress is cultural. It's temporally specific. So in my opinion, Nerv is really a very useful tool to help people manage their stress and anxiety, but it's not the end-all and be-all of stress, right? Stress is a great thing when it comes in manageable, bite-sized chunks that help motivate us. That's great, right? What's not so great is when that's happening all the time, and it's really changing our brain chemistry in a way that Nerv is designed to help.
Our bodies too. That's where
and our bodies and our
from,
health is at stake. And so that's the point in which I want people to be like, oh, hey, this is a product that I could use for that purpose.
So you're trying to, ultimately, it's like destigmatize not just the product of stress, but stress in general.
Right.
Why does it have to be such a vulnerable thing to talk about? Why does it have to be an embarrassing thing to find a solution for? Why can't it be talked about like your energy level?
Right. Well, and from a biological point of view, it's exactly the same, right? There's not stress is an emotion that people feel just like happiness and sadness, right? There's nothing
Right.
biologically stigmatizing about it, and more it's becoming culturally acceptable to discuss these things, which is great, right? Because only when people are able to put them out in the open and discuss them are they able to get help.
Right.
Because when it's kept internal, that's where it starts to build and fester,
Yeah.
right? And I hope that with this product, that one of the effects that we're able to have as a company is to bring that conversation more in the open, right? That, hey, like it's perfectly cool to have one of these on your desk, and all it means is, hey, I'm a chill guy, right? I'm not stressed out, and I'm able to help you however you need.
So how do you go about doing that? Is that you going around and speaking at different places, almost building a personal brand to agree as the neuroscientist you can trust? Is it something like that? Is that part of your marketing plan?
Yeah, so where possible, I try and educate as much as I can. Like I said, I love to teach. I love to sort of talk about neuroscience and stress. And so I love to do podcasts. I love to speak at the university, or as an invited speaker to expos and conferences. And I try and do my best to sort of educate as many people as I can, but also produce content,
Right.
like you see on the Get Nerve website.
Link. Boom.
Right, where you can just very easily, make a video and talk to a large audience of people to say, hey, like, here are the problems, here are the solutions, here's, how to go about getting them. And then I think all of that ultimately translates into the brand of the company in that, we are a modern, non-stigmatized brand that's really accessible, affordable, and available to everybody, not just a small group of people who are a certain type of person, that if you're feeling like you need some help with managing stress and anxiety, that you can trust us and that you walk into the grocery store and grab one of these and it's going to help you out.
Yeah.
Right? That anybody should feel comfortable doing that, and those are the people that we're serving.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you a question about your mindset. So when you think about a problem, do you think about it from a very scientific approach kind of way of like how you said you take 100 questions, then you find the 3 most pivotal questions and you focus on that? Just in your life being a scientist, because for some people who may not know how to deal with problems or deal with stress, be it anything, right? How do you use your mind with the help or without the help of Nerv, but with the help of Nerv, how do you think about things to mitigate stress, to come up with plans, to come up with solutions ultimately?
Yeah, I would say, part of the training of being a scientist is that you're really trained to be both skeptical and comprehensive, right? And what that means is whenever you have any kind of problem, you really want to think about it from as many angles as you can,
Right.
right? With as many different frameworks as you can. Whether it be, is this a cultural problem? Is it a social problem?
Okay.
Is it a physical problem, right? How are the different ways that I can address it? And you form a hypothesis, right? You say, here's my expected solution. Is it going to work? How is it going to work? And why is it going to work? And then you come up with a plan for how you're going to tackle it.
And that's really the plan part is that a series of experiments or is that still the precursor to experimenting? So you identify the problem where both the micro angles and the macro situation exist, and then you use your 5 questions, what, when, where, why, and how, right, to come up with your hypothesis. And then from there, do you plan to test different ways and then start testing, or what's the planning piece consist of?
Yeah, I mean it's much like doing an experiment. You form a hypothesis and you give it a go, and then you get some feedback and you look at, did it work, did it not work? If it didn't work, here's what I can change when I tackle it again. And you're always sort of on a path toward the ultimate truth by answering a small part of the question each time. Right?
Right.
You're never going to get the perfect answer right away. It's always an iterative process, and you're just trying your best to sort of improve each time as you try to tackle a problem. And that's really useful in entrepreneurship and in life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because in both of those there are a lot of unknowns, right? And the only way to really make progress is to tackle it step by step,
Yeah.
right? Create sort of achievable, very specific and goal-oriented questions and solutions.
Smart goals.
Right, that you're able to act on, that you're able to see progress with. Because if you create sort of grandstanding, large, overarching things, it's difficult to see progress,
Yeah.
right? So you want to break it down. That's, one way to think about it. And then when things don't work, you want to tackle it from a different angle, right? Sometimes it's very useful to take the opposite approach and try and not achieve the thing that you're doing, to form a null hypothesis and say, hey, if I don't do this, or if the expected result is not the thing and I try this approach, what happens? And if it's not that, well, then I know there's something there.
Right. Which is what they do in debate. Is when you're preparing for a debate, you want to learn both angles of an argument. And then I didn't do debate, but I believe you do that. And then right before the debate starts, they assign you this angle, and then they assign the other person this angle. And you've got to be able to understand all the angles and how something could work and could not work. So that is very important. That's interesting that you pointed that out.
Yeah, it helps to be a skeptic. I mean, scientists are really skeptics. So you really approach any problem or situation thinking, well, what are all the reasons that this shouldn't work?
Yeah.
Right? And then you try and prove yourself wrong.
Yeah.
And if you're able to prove yourself wrong, then you've done a good job as a scientist, right? And if you haven't, well, then you've simply confirmed your hypothesis.
Are you into metaphysics at all?
Yeah, I try and read broadly because, again, you want to have as broad of a perspective to tackle any problem. And so there is nothing that I really discount entirely just because I want to be able to have as many perspectives when I look at a problem as possible.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, this has been awesome. We have to cut down soon. But I wanted to say thank you for driving up here. I know you've had a crazy day putting out those fires. Like I said, if you can't see the video, he's got paint all over his hands. A true hustler, a scientist, a true innovator, a first to market with this amazing product, Nerv. The website's down here. Do you want to shout out the social handles?
Oh, yeah. Get Nerv, GETNERV.
At GETNERV. Link right here.
Yeah, and the website is getnerv.com.
Getnerv.com. Again, the link right here. Clint, you got anything?
We're going to have some video issues here. The actual podcast will be live on audio streaming platforms, and we may be able, we'll still throw it up on YouTube. Sorry for the video issues, guys. My fault. Storage is insane. I thought this podcast was absolutely lit. This was incredible. Thank you, Dr. Michael Jiang. This was sick.
Awesome. Well, guys, enjoy listening to this, watching to as much of it as you can. We'll still have links pop up on the video version.
True.
But I think we got a lot of gems here out of the audio version, so very much appreciate y'all tuning in and listening to Dr. Michael talk to us about stress, stigmas, and entrepreneurship, and how he's going to be changing the game, the industry.
The whole gambit.
Yeah. Everything. We're coming to you with solutions. He's going to be bringing value, and it's going to be exciting to watch his journey. So I implore all of you to follow him as he gets going and starts working with more and more clients, raising more money, and really turning this into the next big thing that you see in all your local gas stations. But for the meantime, we are at Hustle Up, at HSTLUP. Link here. Our website is hustleup.com, www.hstlup.com. We'll have a lot of awesome blog content. We're gonna put more things up. You'll be able to follow everyone we have on here. And again, listen to these because we're bringing you awesome information, conversations with some amazing people, and we're also building a brand. So follow us, follow the story, and we look forward to doing this more often. Thank you guys again for listening and watching. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Clint.
Dr. Michael Jiang. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a good one, guys.